Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Windows Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott, episode 160, recorded June 9th, 2010. Hotfix Rollups. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Go to Assist Express. If you're in tech support, save time and money by supporting your clients and colleagues remotely with Go to Assist Express. For a free 30-day trial, visit gotoassist.com/Windows. And by Drobo, the original S Pro, Drobo FS, and new Drobo Elite, offering expandable storage products for individuals, small businesses, and creative teams. For more information and instant rebates, visit drobo.com/Windows. And by audible.com. To download a free audiobook of your choice, go to audible.com/Windows. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show that covers everything that's going on outside in the Microsoft world. And ladies and gentlemen, here he is from his hotel room in Nolens, I think we call him, Mr. Paul Thurrott.
Hello, sir.
Editor-in-Chief of the SuperSite for Windows, news editor for Windows IT Pro, the author of Windows 7 Secrets and the new forthcoming Windows Phone Secrets. Hey, Paul, what are you doing in Nolens? Are you helping out with the oil spill?
No, I'm not. Sorry. No, I'm here for TechEd 2010.
Ah, what is that?
Or as I call it, the other trade show that's occurring this week in the tech industry. It's Microsoft's IT Pro-oriented trade show, a tech conference.
They do this. Is this unlike the other show? This is one they do every year.
Yeah, every year. Yeah.
Because like the other ones,
it's a big deal.
On demand, kind of.
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
And
so it hasn't been in New Orleans for 10 years, since Katrina, certainly.
Oh, wow.
And this is the first time I've been back since then. I mean, I've been here before, and I've been here even for TechEd before, or for other Microsoft shows, but, it's been a long time.
It is one of my favorite cities, New Orleans. I love it. Have you been to the Café du Monde and had a beignet?
I have.
And the little chicory cafe?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, not on this trip, but yes, I've had the chicory coffee.
Are you in the French Quarter? Where are you?
I am, yeah.
Oh, how nice.
Right off of Canal.
Oh, how nice. Yeah, it's just a great city. I haven't been there. I was there right before Katrina, and I haven't been there since. So
it's a beautiful city, but man, it is hot in ways that don't even make sense. It's got to be 95 degrees out today. It is whatever the maximum amount of humidity is.
Yeah.
I feel like just walking to the bus, you can get asthma here.
Sure. That's the idea. The magnolias are dripping. They got the lichen and the moss and everything, and the vampires going around at night. It's great. I love it.
They do have the vampires.
Yeah, they're going around at night. That's great.
Yeah.
I loves it. Oh, how fun.
It's a neat city.
How long have you been there, and how much longer are you going to be?
I've been here forever. I've been here since Saturday, and I'm flying back tomorrow.
Oh, that's a nice long visit.
Yeah. We had Microsoft had a reviewers workshop on Sunday. I had to come in early for most of the stuff happened Monday, but we have the magazine is a sponsor of the show, so we have a Best of TechEd award that we do every year, or a series of awards, I should say, and that event is happening tonight. So I'm going to take part in that, and then I'm going to vamoose.
Scram. So, what do you learn at TechEd? Who is it for? Who's it for?
Yeah. IT pros and developers,
and press, obviously.
Yeah, historically, IT pros. So this week has been a lot of stuff around Windows Server, the Hyper-V stuff that's coming down the road, virtualization, Microsoft's plans for cloud computing, different server products like Microsoft Communications Server and so forth. So I won't bore you with most of that, but I wanted to reiterate, one of the things, because people ask about this stuff, is there's a Service Pack 1 release coming for Windows 7 and also for Windows Server 2008 R2. Those two products were developed on the same code base. The Windows 7 version of SP1 is not going to be a big deal, right? I think there is literally one functional change around remote desktop, and the rest of it is just hot fixes and other fixes that are being aggregated into a single installer. So if you're looking forward to SP1, I guess the response I would give is, don't bother, because it's not going to be a big deal. But
we mentioned this before, that Microsoft, because of XP SP2, they changed people's kind of thought, how they think about.
So I had a rather lively discussion with Microsoft about this very topic, and they have screwed the pooch on the service pack thing, and their naming conventions are so horrible, I don't even know where to start. And this is going to be so convoluted that I don't think you'll even understand what I'm saying. But try to consider this for a moment.
Okay.
Windows Vista came out and was its own code base, right? Now, they were working on a version of Server to go with Vista, but it didn't ship until about a year later. By that time, Microsoft was already working on Vista Service Pack 1. So the version of Server that accompanies Vista, also known as Windows Server 2008, is on the Windows Vista SP1 code base. So Microsoft, when they shipped that version of Server, said, well, this one ships with Service Pack 1. It's sort of like it's included, just to confuse people.
We included the Service Pack.
Yeah. So there's no reason to wait, because Service Pack 1 is already out. So when Service Pack 2 came out for those systems, it was the second Service Pack for Vista, but the first Service Pack for Windows Server 2008. Okay, whatever. They're on the same code base. Now, flash forward to Windows 7. Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008's successor, called Windows Server 2008 R2, which is a terrible name, are on the same code base. Not the same code base as Vista or Server 2008. Further confusing matters, the server version of Windows 7, R2, is 64-bit only, right? There's no 32-bit version. There's going to be a Service Pack 1 that will service both of these products. This Service Pack does not apply to Windows Server 2008. It only applies to Windows Server 2008 R2. Windows Server 2... hold on, it gets worse.
You lost me at hello. Okay, go ahead.
It gets way worse.
It gets worse?
The notion of these R2 releases started back with Windows Server 2003, which was the server version of Windows XP. Okay. Server 2003 R2 was a minor release, but it was API compatible with the previous release. It was application compatible. There was no application compatibility issue going from 2003 to 2003 R2.
So it's the same. It's the same OS.
Yeah. From an application compatibility standpoint, actually from almost any standpoint, yes. Yeah. Now, obviously, when you move from Vista to Windows 7, you're talking about a pretty major functional change, and there's a difference in the application compatibility model. So with Server 2008 going to Server 2008 R2, actually, even though it's an R2 release, there was not an application compatibility guarantee. So even though this was a seemingly minor upgrade, it in fact could and did break a lot of compatibility for applications. So it was kind of a disaster. Now, so now you have Windows Server 2008 R2 SP1. Service Pack 1, right? That's a nice long name. With Windows 7 SP1, no major functional changes. But in the server version of the Service Pack, major functional changes. So you have a Service Pack to a minor release of an operating system that has major functional changes over and above the major functional changes in the previous thing, which was supposed to be a minor functional update with, API compatibility, which didn't happen. And this is the world of Microsoft.
Oh, look, squirrels. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you talking?
You see what I'm saying?
Paul, I am cross-eyed from that.
Try to keep this straight in your head.
Did you have that written down, or did you just do that?
Here's one for you. If you had a guess why companies haven't upgraded from Windows Server 2008 to R2, or purchased servers with 2008 R2 on them, or purchased the software itself, and then exercised the downgrade rights so that they could instead run Windows Server 2008 and not R2. What would you guess that reason would be?
You lost me. I don't know.
Of course, how would you even know?
I don't know. I would guess because it's simpler. They don't want to worry about the.
No, it's from a setup experience or whatever. I would say these things are almost identical.
Okay.
The reason is that Server 2008 R2 doesn't run on 32-bit hardware, and there are still companies out there trying to milk these older servers, which of course are inefficient and energy hungry and all that kind of stuff. And this is kind of a disaster in the server world because of course Microsoft's trying to move everyone forward to these more efficient systems. And
you know what? They're cheap, gang. upgrade. I guess if you have 12,000 servers, you can't.
It's really frustrating. So I had a funny meeting with a guy from Microsoft who's a good friend of mine, and I just went in and I said, "Yeah, I am tired of you guys fricking up everything," and and it was really funny. But I mean, he promised that going forward they were going to change the branding and naming stuff, and they would make this simpler. But it is just so stupid. It's too bad.
Why? To what do you attribute this confusing state of affairs?
It factors beyond their control in many ways. I mean, I think that the intention was good. Microsoft's business customers want to be able to understand what the schedule is. So Microsoft said, hey, we'll make this very simple schedule. Every 4 years, we'll put out a major release. Every 2, we'll do a minor release. The minor releases will be called R2. They'll be backwards compatible. There'll be no worries about compatibility. But then, other factors, Vista didn't take off in the market. So Microsoft decided with Windows 7 they needed to make major changes. Well, the server, version that went with Windows 7 had to have major changes too. There was nothing you could do. I mean, they were changing the client, and it kind of screwed up the whole thing. So none of these R2 releases have really done what Microsoft wanted them to do. And I think what they've come to realize is that this was a good idea in theory, but maybe it didn't work out in the real world. So they're gonna get rid of the major minor thing and just have releases, and the server version will always come out with a client going forward as they did with this past version.
I think at this point we all need a well-deserved break for a commercial.
For something entertaining.
Something not even entertaining, something comprehensible, something...
I just want to give you, this is really just a peek into the types of things that I have to deal with.
Your world, and welcome to it, Paul Thurrott. James Thurber thought he had a world. You have a world.
In case you were thinking maybe you wanted to do something similar to what I'm doing for
a
living.
The exciting life of the tech journalist can be yours today.
Yeah.
Just enroll at the Paul Thurrott School of Writing.
School of self-deprecation.
Yeah. Let me just quickly get a Drobo ad in here, if you don't mind. I think we all need a little something anodyne and bracing to take us away from our troubles.
Something that actually works the way it's supposed to and makes sense.
Drobo is actually great for people who are using Windows. In fact, if you're using virtualization, it's certified for virtualization. If you are, it'd be a great server drive system. Just go to Drobo, D-R-O-B-O, drobo.com/Windows. There it is. And you'll see the lovely anime Paul Thurrott glaring at you with his bright white smile. Actually, it doesn't look like you have any individuated teeth. You have just one.
It's a bar of. It's a
one
tooth. It's like a baleen whale's mouth.
Paul's massive tooth glaring out at you for all to see. The wonder of it. The wonder of it. But that's at drobo.com/Windows. Really, once you're there, what you really want to do is look at the deals on Drobos. Drobo is an enclosure at its root. I mean, that's the simplest thing. It is a disk enclosure. The original Drobo holds 4 SATA drives. They can be heterogeneous, mix and match. It will form them into one single large USB drive with redundancy. So any drive can fail on the 4 and you replace it. Even better, you can add capacity by popping out the smallest drive while it's running, putting in a new larger drive. It'll rebuild and bam! Now you've got more capacity. All the way up to, I think if you put 4 2-terabyte drives in there, that'd be 8 terabytes. They've got the Drobo S, which is great for performance operations like editing video. It is 5 drives. Any 2 can fail. The Drobo FS, which is kind of like their NAS. It connects via gigabit Ethernet. The Drobo S also has, by the way, FireWire 800. Adds that to the, and eSATA adds that to the USB 2.0. The Drobo Pro, which is so slick, amazing, 8 drives, 16 terabytes, redundancy, any 2 drives can fail, great reliability. And then the Drobo Elite, which adds, it's basically a storage area network, dual gigabit Ethernet ports. Both the Drobo Pro and the Drobo Elite can connect via iSCSI, which means you can use Ethernet for hard drive speeds. VMware certified, Windows virtualization certified, and what a great deal. $25 to $500 off when you purchase the Drobo model, plus hard drives. That's right for you. Use the coupon code WINDOWS. Find out all about it at drobo.com/Windows. drobo.com/Windows. The lovely Callie Lewis will give you a Drobo demo in action. You got little sinus issues? That humidity getting to you there, Paul? Drobo.com/Windows. We thank them so much for their support. A really great company with a great product that is very useful for anybody who has a lot of stuff to store. Drobo.com. We actually have a jingle. You want to hear the jingle?
I've heard the jingle.
Have you heard the jingle?
D-R-O-B-O, D-R-O-B-O, Drobo. Feeling droopy.
And now back to Windows Weekly, which is already in progress. So as Paul was saying, if you've got Service Pack 2 running on Windows Server 2008, you'll find that anyway, forget it. What we started this conversation by saying is that SP1 for Windows 7.
Did we start with something?
I believe we started there, and that's in beta now.
It will be in a public beta by the end of July.
Cool. And
ship in final form by the end of.
But the point we were making.
The point. Is there a point? It was more of a side story, really. Just what a mess this stuff is.
Yeah.
If you're looking for Windows Vista Service Pack 3 or Windows Server 2008 Service Pack 3, I'm told they have no plans for that. Although I personally have a hard time believing they're not going to roll that stuff up, into something, like a hotfix roll-up or something.
Right.
But
isn't that really all these are now? They're just hotfix roll-ups.
Well, it's what they should be. But
all the kids love hotfix roll-ups.
Yes,
I put them in my kids' lunch every day.
Yeah. So no, there's some stuff in server. The server R2 SP1 release has some major updates actually. So I know you don't want to go through them.
Boy, am I excited to hear that.
I have a list of 57 changes I'd like to discuss in some detail.
Those. Good, because my farm needs tending, and
yes.
This might be a very good time for you to be be doing that. No, I
won't do this too.
But I'm sure if people went to the SuperSite for Windows at winsupersite.com, they could find all these things.
Actually, no, I refuse to discuss it.
You won't even do it there. No, yeah. but read them on the podcast. If you could you read it in the voice of Ian McKellen?
It just seemed like the more efficient way to do it.
Oh, Paul. So, we're not anywhere close to end of life for Vista, though. I mean, they're going to keep that going for a while. Am I right?
Yeah, although I think that, effectively speaking, a lot of people are just going to move off of it.
I hope so. I mean, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
7 is so damn good.
I mean, there's a case to be made. I mean, from the perspective of different people who like XP, I want to stick with XP for whatever reason. I happen to disagree with that, but I have a hard time imagining anyone running Vista saying, I like this better than Windows 7. I'm going to stick with this. It's like Windows 7, but not quite as good. So I thought I would just stay there, and yeah. I don't see that happening.
No. Windows Phone 7. You're still working on the book?
Oh, yes. Jeez. Yes, I am. So a lot of news there, actually. In fact, including some stuff I neglected to put in the notes. One of the big things that came out of this week that I can now discuss, which I had learned about previously, was that in the beginning of July, Microsoft is going to see a number of developers with free phones so that they can get going on Windows Phone 7 development using a new version of the OS. And it's unclear how they're going to do this exactly. And one of the things I was told was that, these phones won't be production phones, obviously, because the actual phones aren't coming out until the fall, but they will be good for the next year or so. And then at some point, they're going to be bricked in the sense that they just won't support future updates. But they're really designed to get people up and running with the new system and allowing them to have actual hardware in hand, so they can get going. So that was a cool bit of news. And obviously they're trying to drum up some developer stuff there. They did announce some changes in the Windows, what they call the Windows Marketplace for mobile, that on-phone app store that they have. I don't think we have to go through this too much, but
how much of this is his response to kind of Apple and Google? I mean, Doesn't a modern smartphone have to have an app store?
Yeah. So, well, Windows Mobile 6.5 today has an app store. So, in other words, what they've announced is looking forward to Windows Phone 7. Here's how we're changing it, right? And some of those changes aren't so much a response to anything Google or Apple is doing, but rather their own unique take on some of the stuff that some of the capabilities that these apps can have. So, for example, there's a trial API. Meaning that you can offer customers a trial version of your application. And then when they pay a fee to buy the version, they don't have to re-download the app and get a new version of it. They just unlock the rest of it. That's something that will be built in, that type of thing. So I can't remember the full list of app types, but obviously there'll be free apps, there'll be paid apps, there'll be freemium apps, ad-funded apps, and then there'll be these trial apps, right, that can turn into full-fledged apps and so forth. So they're doing a bunch of different stuff around that. I mean, I think the basics of this are probably very similar to what Apple does. There's an annual registration fee of $99. There's a revenue split and so forth. But
did they say what the split is?
It's 70-30.
Oh, same as Apple.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like that model's working okay.
Yeah, doing all right. Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but it seems like that's worked out.
I would think they go like, 29.71, just to one better, right?
Yeah, it's not the percentage; it's the volume.
That's really true. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, how much you're going to get to sell is the key. Steve Ballmer at the D conference last week said an interesting thing. I don't know if it kind of went unnoticed that Microsoft had missed a cycle. Did you see that?
Well, yeah, that's Microsoft speak. I mean, what he meant was, the iPhone, the cycle was the iPhone cycle, right? That
well, he's basically saying we're too late. We missed this year. Well, better luck next year.
Yeah. This is like stating that the sky is blue, right? I mean,
I think it's interesting though that Ballmer's not notorious for admitting a mistake or a failure or even that somebody else has a lead, is he?
I would put it like this: when Windows Mobile 6.5 shipped last year, he wasn't going to say that.
Right.
But now that Windows Phone 7 is almost in the can, it's getting ready. People have actually seen it. It seems to work well, et cetera. Now is when you can say, okay. This is like Steve Jobs getting up on stage, and it would be interesting to count the number of times there's a conversation like this in one of his keynotes where he says, oh, this is way better than the 3GS. This is 70 times better than the 3GS. This is 80% better than the whatever.
Always.
I mean, part of salesmanship is dumping all over the last version. Right. The thing that last year was so much better than everything else that anyone else ever made.
Last week's audience was so cruddy. Yeah, we're so glad you're here.
Crap. Yeah. So it's easy, when you finally have an answer to say you have an answer. So, I mean, I've read this a couple of different ways. One of the other things he said that I thought was, it's pretty obvious, but when you're a maker, when you make hammers, you see everything as a nail, that kind of thing. Okay. But was he talking about Apple or about Microsoft? It's not actually clear.
Well, he was supposedly talking about Apple because he's saying it's the post-PC, that Steve's notion that it's a post-PC era is nutty.
But you could apply it to either way, right? So in other words, Apple lost the PC war or whatever you want to call it, so Apple sees the future of computing as these devices that it makes it very successul. Microsoft won the PC war. Well, it sees the future as PCs.
Right. Both of them are hammers. Or nails searching for a hammer, right?
You could make this argument either way. I mean, okay. But I think that, with regards to Windows Phone specifically, they made some announcements this week around the business-oriented stuff. I mean, I don't know that they were announcements per se. I mean, it was more of a clarification of, look, this is the stuff we have in there that's for businesses. They didn't really reveal too much that was new per se. But, I mean, I think for people who aren't paying attention, maybe this was a revelation of sorts or whatever, like, oh, they're going to have Office in there. I didn't know that, I would look at it like this, and this is both good news and bad news, depending on your perspective. Microsoft intends to pull an Apple in many ways and nail certain experiences, like really, really do a good job on core, core experiences or whatever you want to call it. By that nature, you're also missing out on some things, right? So, it'll be easy to criticize Windows Phone because it will lack certain things like cut and paste, right out of the box. Microsoft has an answer to that and so forth, and they have a plan to update the phone over time and all that kind of stuff. But as was the case with the original iPhone, it's not going to be everything to all people right away. So depending on how you approach this thing, you will either see it as a very focused device that is really excellent, or you will see it as flawed in some way and thus not of interest. And I think that, even the business-oriented features are like that. So if you look at a lot of the exchange policy support stuff, that's kind of boring, but it's very important to businesses. Windows 7 is not a superset of what's available today in Windows Mobile. It's a subset. And for that reason and for other reasons, Windows Mobile 6.5 is going to be around for another year or so, just to support those huge businesses that need to tightly control these phones. The big question for me, as always, is going to be how quickly Microsoft will update this phone going forward. Will they
do firmware updates? Are they known for that?
Oh yeah. No, they're not known for it, but they are doing it.
In-place firmware updates. That's Absolutely. What Google's doing. Although Google, interestingly, has said we're not going to do it more than once a year now. We're going to slow down. They see the problem because people are going, well wait a minute, I want the latest version, and I don't have it on this phone, but that phone does, and it's a problem. It is a problem. And I would say this, one of the biggest innovations that Apple did with the original iPhone was to take control of that software updating away from the carriers. That's right. Because their policy was never to update. Right. And put it back where it belongs, in the hands of the people that make the software. Apple has been fairly aggressive about updating the phones and the phone-like devices, I think. Right. Google has been extremely aggressive, even more than Apple, in updating the phones to date. Right. And obviously that's something that can slow down as the platform becomes more mature. The problem from the Microsoft side, and this is something that really it's in the back of my head as a potential issue, is, Microsoft's business customers expect things to be very measured, planned out in advance. Maybe they want a major update once a year or every 6 months or something like that. Well, because they need to test. Yeah. I really feel that for Windows Phone to succeed, though, they need to follow the Google model for the short term, because it's going to be so flawed when it first comes out that they're going to need to update it. So this is still an up-in-the-air thing, I know from my own experience using it that this phone is it's fantastic. I really think people are going to be impressed by it more. I think the general reaction is going to be, this is way better than I thought it was going to be. Really? Great. Absolutely. But then, it will depend on what it is, right? There'll be these little things every once in a while and you say, well, it doesn't have this thing, And it was easy for me as a reviewer to pick apart a lot of the things that the iPhone didn't have when it first came out. I think it's going to be easy as well as a reviewer with Windows Phone to do the same. But here's the problem. And they will. Everyone will. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right. And I will. I will too. Everyone will. The problem is this, the iPhone came out in an age where there were no good smartphones. So the iPhone did those things so well, and it blew away the competition immediately. So much so that arguably they're only now beginning to catch up from sort of a functional standpoint. The Windows Phone is launching into a very different world. We've had iPhones for 4 years now. The bar has been raised. You can't do what Apple did 4 years ago and expect people to be okay with it. This thing can't sit still for the year after it releases. It just can't. So I'm really nervous that Microsoft is going to move too slowly after the fact. And I hope that that's not what happens. Because it's a business phone. Well, no, it's a phone for consumers and businesses. I would say that Windows Mobile was, by and large, very much directed at businesses and met that certain need. They are directing Windows Phone at consumers and businesses, and specifically people who, I think, and this is most people these days, where the line between these things has blurred. That you, as I said today out at the show, talking to somebody, you could be sitting in the stands at your kid's baseball game and a work email comes in and yet you want to respond to it right then. It has to be able to do both. And, Windows Phone or Windows Mobile was good at the business side, but it wasn't great at the consumer experiences. And I think Windows Phone is going to really offer up something compelling there. Are they going to position it for both markets? Yeah. Will there'll be a business handset and a consumer handset? They'll do both in the same. Both. Okay. Yeah. That's what everybody does now, right? And the truth is, this is one area where they can beat Apple, because while the iPhone is very popular, it's not less so in business. Right. So it's an opportunity. But I think from the perspective of those businesses that are very concerned about manageability of phones and so forth, it's kind of odd, because this has been one of the few advantages Microsoft has had historically over the iPhone. They're not going to have that advantage with the first release of Windows Phone. It will be as limited or as capable in the enterprise as is the iPhone. It's going to be roughly comparable. They're not going to be ahead of Apple in that area.
On the other hand, the trends right now are such that, you know, there's this trend that Microsoft calls the consumerization of IT, where, you know, people get these incredible capabilities in these devices and they expect to be able to use them with work. And a lot of businesses are just giving up and not trying to lock down these phones anyway. So that could benefit Microsoft in the long run. We'll see. But anyway, I think that I don't think there was anything dramatic announced at TechEd with regards to Windows Phone per se, in the sense that if you've been really paying attention, you kind of knew this stuff was happening anyway. But I think what they were trying to do is just send a message to big business that, you know, this phone's coming and it will serve most of your needs, you know, as much as, say, Android or iPhone, certainly.
Oh, yeah. I think neither Android or iPhone are really celebrated by business, especially for security reasons.
Yeah, but, you know, you kind of hit the high points, right? You want to have Exchange compatibility and so forth. You want to have some other...
Has Apple made good progress there, in your opinion? Is 4 going to make...
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, but even before 4, they had good Exchange compatibility. You know, there are things built into Exchange that are very powerful around remote wipe and the ability to do things with the phone and manage the phone. You know, I think the new baseline for Exchange support is multiple Exchange account support, right?
Apple
and the
does
ability
2,
to,
right?
I don't know if it's 2 or multiple. I don't. It's at least 2. Yeah. I mean, Windows Phone will be multiple. It will be any number. And
any
I think
number. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because that's the new standard, I think, for mobile, you know, email calendaring and contact management, right? It's Exchange ActiveSync, and it's just the de facto standard. It's the way it is. And it's not just in businesses. You know, if you want to hook up your Google Gmail and Google Calendar and so forth to your iPhone or to your Android phone, it's Exchange ActiveSync. That's the protocol that's used.
Yeah. See, I don't know anything about that.
Well, when you set it up on your phone, I mean, you go through the Exchange
account.
Actually,
ironically, when I hook up to my Google account, I use Exchange.
Right. Well, not ironic. They use, you know, they license Exchange ActiveSync.
Right.
It is the de facto
So you
standard.
have to.
If you think about how IMAP works, right? Keeping everything on the server and offering you know, real-time synchronization. That base, you know, ActiveSync essentially is IMAP, you know, for
contacts
and calendars as well.
Right.
Yeah, it's basically the same sort of thing. So.
Well, you know, which Windows 7 phone do you think I should get now that you're the expert?
So I can't discuss individual phone models yet, and of course there's a lot coming that I haven't seen. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, I'm sending the Evo back. You know, the review period has expired.
And
well, I was thinking of buying it. I think it's the nicest Android phone out there. I wish the battery life were better. I think that's the only rap on it, frankly, is the battery life. But all Android phones have bad battery life. But now that I've seen the iPhone, I have to say I haven't seen the screen. I'm going to want to see it before I buy it. But boy, it seems like Apple, with that screen, has set a new bar. This is what I think Ballmer might have been saying. We missed the cycle. Is that we're going to, in effect, Windows Phone 7 is responding to the last generation of iPhone, not the next generation.
Well, I don't think he was saying that. I think he was saying we just didn't compete with the previous couple of generations of iPhone. You know, I'm sure Microsoft's hope is that they are competing head toe-to-toe with modern Android and a modern iPhone system. You know, there's no reason that a Android or Windows phone can't have high pixel density and so forth.
Sure. Sure.
I'm with regards to the iPhone specifically, I think that the
is it too late to with this first generation of Windows Phone 7 to respond, to put out? I guess it is. Those
to respond in what way? I mean,
well,
what do you mean?
To put in that kind of screen, for instance.
So they can't have a screen with that resolution, but they could certainly have a screen with that
by the spring
density of pixels or whatever. Yeah,
right.
I mean, the resolution of a Windows Phone is just like the resolution of the phone that you just sent back. It's still very high res. It's like 800 by 480. I mean, it's still very high res.
Right.
I don't think it's the resolution. Well,
it's the dots per inch is what it is. It's over it's 300 something dots per inch.
My wish for the iPhone is that they would use more of the real estate on the front of the device for the screen. You know, I agree. The resolution's great. I wish the screen were bigger. Yeah. You know, and
that's why I like the Evo. It's an incredible screen.
Yeah. Huge. You know, in the same way that a lot of, in the circles you travel within, of course, you see a lot of Mac and Apple guys and so forth. And coming to TechEd is like the Microsoft version of that, because everywhere here you see, Dell, HP, and Lenovo laptops. And you actually see Windows mobile phones everywhere. It's crazy. It's like this weird little microcosm where Microsoft phones are actually out in the world being used by people. And people here, I've seen a number of these HTC HD2 screens.
Oh, those are beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful screens. And, again, 800 by 480, big screen, And
it's comparable to the Evo, yeah.
Yeah, that's the type of thing. That's a Windows Phone 7 looking device. That's what they're going to look like. So,
right.
I mean, I don't think there's any... I think if you put one of those next to one of the new iPhones, I don't think it's going to be that clear cut. I mean, I think a lot of people will look at the biggest screen and say, ooh, I'm going to go with that.
But it's not, yeah. I mean, I do prefer a bigger screen. I would love to have that dots per inch on a bigger screen.
Sure.
I don't know if there's a technical reason why they can't or won't.
No, they will. Of course they will. I mean, I'm a little surprised the screen did get bigger.
I am too. Kinda, yeah. Well, they wanted this DPI.
Yeah,
and I think
they're into aesthetics that other people don't ever consider.
Nobody until Apple did this, nobody thought about getting that kind of resolution on that side.
No, but now it's a requirement for these guys.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of set a new bar, hasn't it?
Yeah. No, I need to see one, and of course I will get one. But I think that for a lot of people, that's not whatever. I mean, I don't know that that's going to be. I don't think that's the deciding factor.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
Well, that's the words. We'll see. And so okay, I misinterpreted then Steve when he said we missed the cycle on this one, and I'm not alone. I think others.
He meant with Windows Mobile. He didn't mean Windows Phone.
He didn't mean Windows Phone 7. Got it.
No. And this is a very common assessment within Microsoft and for people who follow Microsoft that, yeah, they never replied. This speaks to that conversation I had with the Windows Mobile folks that I made. We made fun of a couple of weeks ago, probably, where. It was a couple of years ago, and I spoke to them, and I said, the iPhone's killing you in the consumer market. When are you going to do something about it? And the woman from the Windows Mobile team said, this proves the contention we've always had, that these phones will be popular with consumers. And I said, are you into lunch? I mean, what are you kidding me? Right. But this explains what happened with Windows Mobile.
Right.
And that's what he means by we missed the cycle. They didn't respond in any adequate fashion to the iPhone, Windows Mobile 6.5 might have been an interesting response 3 years ago. I mean, look, we have multi-touch too. It took them that long to get multi-touch, on a phone. I mean, it's interesting.
I think I think the screen is the only one because the Windows Mobile's always had multitasking. Front-facing camera to me is still a moot question. I don't know if that's something anybody wants.
Yeah. We'll see.
We'll see.
I made it. Here's something you might find interesting. I was talking to somebody at the show today. We were doing some video for the magazine, and I said, one of the things that's been funny to me as a Windows guy is watching these like Mac guys or Apple guys kind of come to terms with this tablet form factor and kind of the weirdness of how when you stretch this UI up and how things work differently, and you can see Apple's going to struggle to get this right over certain revisions and so forth. This is stuff that in the tablet PC world, on the PC side, we dealt with this stuff years ago. But the flip side of that is when you talk about multi-touch on a tiny screen on a smartphone, and kind of the issues around how do you do things like select text when your finger is bigger than the font that you're trying to press on? How do you do things like select text and then enable things like cut, copy, and paste and so forth? This is something that Apple now has had 3 or 4 years of experience with, and that the Microsoft side is only now beginning to wrestle with. And I think that we're going to go through the same kind of birthing troubles,
Oh, I agree.
Around,
in fact,
around figuring that stuff out.
Wrestling is a perfect word for it because I don't even think anybody's really solved it properly. Both Android and Apple have differing solutions, neither of which I really particularly like. I mean, this is just not... You're coming from a keyboard/mouse world, and it's hard to move some of those metaphors.
I could see from my own usage on Windows Phone that, for example, just the type of thing you have to do to, press down on a line of text in such a way that, some sort of a caret appears, and then you can perform some action from there, select some text or do whatever. On the iPhone today, I'd have to say it may not be perfect, but it's certainly more elegant than what's available on these other systems, including Windows Phone. And again, I think it's because it's really the first generation where they've had to deal with this as a very low-level component of the system, something that needs to work everywhere, no matter where text it might be. And it's just it's hard to overcome the fact that they just don't have the years of experience with that particular type of interaction. So, this, again, is one of those issues that Microsoft will just, they'll have to deal with.
Or just, steal it.
Or just steal it. Yeah. Well, they're not stealing it. That's the thing. And that's what kills me, because I almost wish they would steal it. Because the thing they came up with is not quite as
Is
good.
it a patent issue, you think? Or it must be. They must be a little afraid of
It's got to be a patent issue.
copying too closely.
Yeah.
That's a shame, because, the truth is, from a point of view of a user, it would be nice if everybody could cross-pollinate. We could all agree on one way. I mean, look, we got a QWERTY keyboard. What if somebody had patented QWERTY and said, oh, you can only use the QWERTY, QWERTY layout if, you license it from us.
I suspect if the QWERTY keyboard were invented today, it would be patented.
Of course it would, and it would be, and that would hold us all back, because you'd have to learn a new keyboard every time you got somebody else's computer.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy.
Right. Well, I gives Microsoft some credit for not just copying the whole, app interface. If you look at the iPhone or Android, these things work very similarly. That you have a grid of icons of some sort, and you want to get into a certain application. You go in, you go out, you go in.
No, I like this Zune. What do they call it? The crisscross thing.
Well, they call it on the Windows Phone. They're calling it a panoramic experience, or a hub. Where you can flick across the screen,
or down, or left or right.
Yeah.
Because Android is left right. Apple's left right. Nobody's got that up down. I like that up down. Actually, Android kind of does on the application if you line up when you open the application window.
But I think the big innovation there is just the integration of services on the back end. That if you want to do something like listen to music, for example, if you're on an iPhone, you can say, well, I have to go into iPod, the application, because that's where that stuff is. But if I want to listen to Pandora, there's a Pandora application. Or if you want to do something like look at photos, some photos will be in your Facebook application, because that's where those photos are. Some will be in the Flickr application. Some of them will be on the web. Some of them will be on the camera or the pictures interface that the iPhone has built in. But they're all in different places. And I think one of the very cool things about Windows Phone is that they have this integration where if you want to look at pictures, it's in the Pictures Hub, and it doesn't matter where that stuff comes from. If it's Windows Live or Facebook or MySpace or Flickr or whatever, it can all be integrated into this single seamless view. And it's your pictures and your friends' pictures, different degrees of friends as we have now online, and your family's pictures and so forth is all available from this one view. You don't have to think of the service name or the application name. You just think, I want to look at pictures.
I like it.
Yeah, it is neat.
I like that. I think, on a larger philosophical note, we in the early days of the PC era, we gained so much because of the cross-pollination, because it was IBM, for better or worse, forgot to kind of protect their intellectual property so we could have clones.
Yep.
And that's why it grew so fast. And I think that, unfortunately, as we enter this mobile era, where there is the potential for equivalent growth, and it could be just as exciting, I think the mobile era is in many ways like the PC era. It is a new era of computing. It's so encumbered, and people are so at each other's throats, and it's so competitive that we're not going to see the speed of innovation and the growth, and we're going to see these forking of these concepts. And I think that's really bad for end users. And this isn't about open or closed, because it's we have the same problem with so-called open Android.
This open versus closed thing is a little bit of a red herring in my mind. When people criticize Apple for having a closed system of some sort, where applications need to be approved and so forth. I mean, to me, that's not really open versus closed. It's just the policies of that particular company.
It's more a style, But what I'm saying is that there was an openness in the early days of the PC era, not open, capital O, open, but there was an openness and a freedom that allowed people to innovate.
Not to get off on a side trip down memory lane here, but the original IBM PC, for example, because they needed to get this thing on the market very quickly, was built on open parts. The only part, I think, major part of that was patented was the BIOS. And that was the thing that Compaq and others had to reverse engineer.
They reverse engineered it, though, yeah.
Because that was patented, right? But the other, the cards that they used, the expansion cards and all that, the ports that, the standard industry ports that were available on it were all, open. They were pre-existing, essentially.
And that was a huge part of it.
Yeah, it made it very easy to make clone devices or clone-like devices,
Right. And then the one thing that was more closed, but Microsoft, I think, handled it very well, was the operating system. But by starting with DOS and then with Windows, by making a stable platform to develop on that was virtually universal, it really fostered application development. And that was open.
And I think
in a sense.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't an open source operating system, but the APIs were open. You could use any tool you wanted.
Yeah. Well, right. So I think IBM tried to be open there as well, right? Originally, there were 3 OSs, and PC-DOS was one of them.
Right. OS 2.
Well, no. It was before OS 2.
Even before, yeah.
There was a CPM.
There was DR-DOS, PC-DOS, and MS-DOS, yep.
No, actually, there was like a Pascal system that was available very briefly.
Right. You're right. P system.
And there was a CPM, a 16-bit version of CPM, whatever that was.
CPM, PC-DOS, P system.
Yeah,
that was on the original PCs you're talking about.
On the original PC, yeah. No, MS-DOS established itself as the standard. There's some benefits to this. Whether it's open or not, there's some benefits to a single system.
Well, and that's what you're seeing as all this wooing of the developers that's going on right now from all 3 parties is, and a developer has to make it, unless the developer is flush, the developer has to make a choice. And developers are sitting here going, which do we do? Apple? Do we? Apple's got this big, incredible ecosystem, and yet we could develop something for the ecosystem, misunderstand the terms of service, and get yanked,
and have it never come out,
and have all of this for naught. You could do it on Android with a smaller ecosystem, but growing, and you're guaranteed to be able to sell it because you can sell it from your own website, or you could do it for Microsoft with a small ecosystem, but maybe better tools. I don't know. What is Microsoft's pitch on that?
Yeah, I think Microsoft has a great pitch from a developer tool standpoint, but because the biggest developer group in the world is still, these people have experience on Windows and so forth, and it's the same tools. Visual Studio, Silverlight is based on the .NET framework stuff.
So they know how to write for these platforms.
They know how to write for this stuff. It's very straightforward, and then the developer tools are fantastic. I mean, some of the Apple stuff is truly. I don't want to be insulting here. I mean, it's kind of old-fashioned. It's very strange. But
really, Xcode compared to Visual Studio?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, absolutely. Visual Studio is beautiful. But given the barrier to entry,
try Android, which I'm learning right now. You're using
Java.
You're using Java and Eclipse,
I know,
and a JDK that's an ADK.
It's like etching a picture of a rhinoceros on a cave wall. But it's interesting to me that the iPhone is so popular that developers are hurdling over this barrier because, you have to have a Mac.
Right.
You have to learn a new environment. You have to learn a new crazy programming language, by the way. Not a new language, but new to you, right? I mean, just different enough to completely screw you up. I mean, when you move between languages like C# on the Microsoft world, Objective-C in the Apple world, and Java on the Android world, these things are all very similar. And it is the fact that they're so similar that I think this is going to screw a lot of people up because there are certain features available in each that aren't available in the others. And I think it's very confusing to people. It's why that Adobe cross-platform stuff, or whoever comes up with something like that, could be so powerful for developers. And, Apple right now is, I don't know what Microsoft's stance on that would be. I'm sure they would have no problem with it. But, Apple fears that sort of thing because once you allow people to write iPhone apps off of a Mac, off of their tools, off of their language, all of which are terrible, frankly, to people coming from a more traditional, capable programming environment, you lose interest in doing any of that stuff. And that's, I think the fear is that they would then stop doing things that were maybe specific advantages from a functional standpoint as well. And why wouldn't they, right? If they could write an application that ran properly on all 3 of those major platforms and looked great on all 3, maybe they would, well, we can't take advantage of a gyroscope because that's not available in these other 2 platforms.
Right.
You can sort of understand why they're fearing that. Don't quite understand why they would actively block it. It's unclear to me that that's the right approach, but you sort of understand how that comes about.
It's a fascinating conversation, and the chat room's kind of having some fun with this too because we have a number of developers in there, and of course, there's a lot of partisanship. If you've developed for one platform, you prefer it over the other. You're not going to,
Oh, of course, yeah.
The one advantage tools like Eclipse, open source tools like Eclipse and Android have is that it's developed by developers, kind of.
Yeah, because those guys, they're famous for making good UI.
The UI isn't going to be good, but it's going to be.
You've seen Eclipse. You've seen it.
I use Eclipse. I like Eclipse, but it's not. You're right. It's not as slick.
No, it's not as slick.
The UI is a little like Blender.
Yeah. But
it is made for developers by developers. So I have a feeling that it fits. I don't know. I'm not a developer. I have a feeling it fits developers' needs.
Well, listen, the iPhone and Android are clearly very popular because people are putting up with that stuff. And
you put up with it, as you said. because of the opportunity, not because
now,
of the tool.
I think on the app, on the Microsoft side, in the very beginning especially, the reality is going to be people are going to write apps because it's going to be easy for them to do so. Whether or not that market takes off in an appreciable way and turns into a moneymaker for people, who can say? I've never made any claim on that. All I'm saying is that the developer tool story is fantastic. The user experience story is fantastic. It's successful from that standpoint already. I mean, but will it be successful in the market? I mean, who can say? I have no idea.
That's the $6 million, or maybe $6 billion question after all.
Yeah, I do think there's room in the market for a number of major platforms, and I don't see any reason why Microsoft can't be one of those.
Right. Hey, while Apple's making all this hay with WWDC, the iPhone announcements, the same exact day, calculated to completely be ignored by every tech journalist in the world.
Yeah.
But I saw it.
Okay.
Microsoft ships Office for the web.
They did.
Yep.
Yep.
If a tree ships in the forest and there's no one there because they're all at WWDC, does anybody hear it is the question.
Right. I don't know, but it's out. So
yeah, you know what? They don't need to get headlines for this, do they? They probably don't want headlines for it.
The truth is they launched Office last month. They talked about it. We knew it was coming.
Right.
Here it is, There's some more coming, right? I think, as is so often the case with Microsoft solutions, it's better when used in conjunction with other things. I mean, this is the way Microsoft stuff works. And it's there now. So if you want to access Office on the web and see what that's like, you can do so. But
do I need to own a copy of Office? No, it's free, right?
No, it's free. Yeah. So it's a free version, stripped down version.
Can I use it on the Mac?
You can. You absolutely can. In fact, it works on Safari on the Mac.
Oh.
It's Word and Excel and OneNote and PowerPoint.
OneNote for the web? How is that?
It's fine. I mean, actually, OneNote has one unique feature compared to these other apps in that you can actually use SkyDrive to synchronize notes between the web and your desktop versions of OneNote. So you can actually have that syncing for you in the background automatically. That's kind of neat.
Liking that. Well, okay.
Yeah,
so where do I go to use this? Office?
I believe it's office.live.com.
Oh, man. And do I need a SkyDrive account?
Yeah, well, you need a Windows Live
account.
ID.
Okay, yeah. I got that.
Yeah. Now, in the future, as other Microsoft services come online, like Hotmail, there are going to be additional features around integration between, what we used to send email attachments. You can have them hosted up on SkyDrive, and there are advantages to that. Not just aside from the fact that you're not sending files back and forth, but people can edit the document in the cloud or download it, edit it on their PC and have it automatically saved back to the cloud. And you're not sending a file around. These things, there's some sense of versioning and so forth. So that if you try to access it, it will tell you that someone else has already did it.
This is pretty slick.
Yeah, it's nice.
Wow, look at that.
And that's why when you look at this interface with the ribbon and so forth, the Google stuff looks kind of, old-fashioned.
Ugly.
Comparison, yeah.
Huh. That's pretty slick. That's pretty neat. So I'm going to put my, I made a spreadsheet for my farm game, and I'm going to, just put that right up there.
You're like a mini enterprise.
Oh.
You have the same needs and concerns as any big business.
Absolutely. Well, I've discovered, for instance, you're far better owning tailor shops than Magic's emporiums because.
Yeah, that should have been self-evident. I'm surprised you had to, do any work.
Well,
to figure
I think
that
until we actually ran the numbers, Paul, it was very hard to see, the ROI.
You can use the Spark Lines feature in Excel 2010 to see the different trends there.
That's what I should have done. Dang it! See, this is what you get for using Google Docs. It just screws you up on your farm. So we're going to take a break now, so that Daddy can bring home some mojo bucks. Got to buy those Linden dollars, folks. This show brought to you by our friends at Citrix, who really are the greatest. They're for reals. They do, you probably know the name Citrix from Citrix Enterprise desktop. And, of course, GoToMeeting, Go to My PC. They also have a tool, really nice tool for support professionals called GoToAssist Express. If you're in tech support, you will save time, you will save money, and you will be a support hero to your clients and colleagues. And Mom, haven't I used this with you? Yes. Mom was having trouble. I think it was you couldn't find your Quicken data. And I was on Skype with you. And I said, okay, here. I pasted in a link to gotoassist.com. She went there. 30 seconds later, I'm in her computer. I'm able to find the files. I'm moving around. It's just amazing. Too bad they don't have this for the iPad, Mom, so I could help you with your farm if you had problems. They do have it for Windows and Mac, though, and I'm sure that, they've got GoToMeeting for the iPad. I wouldn't be surprised if they're working on it. GoToAssist, try it free for 30 days. What a great product. Surf to gotoassist.com/Windows, and you can sign up today. It'll take you 30 seconds to install. You can do it for 30 days, unlimited use, but if you, and then you can either buy month to month or, and this is really handy for the occasional support call, day passes. That's if you're using family and friends. But if you're in the support business, the month-to-month is absolutely the way to go. Very affordable. You can do up to 8 sessions at once. You can do unattended sessions. You can go Mac to Mac, Mac to PC, PC to Mac, PC to PC. It includes integrated chat, so you can have a conversation. Say, this is what I'm doing. You can drag and drop fixes, patches, updates from one machine, from your machine to the support client's machine. You can get an assay of everything that's running on that machine, including operating system version, antivirus, or security software. Go to assist.com/Windows. Brought to you by Citrix. All the data during your sessions completely secure with end-to-end 128-bit encryption. There's free 24/7 customer support. This is the product you've been looking for. If you're in support, you have to have this tool. Go to assist.com/Windows. Try it free for 30 days right now. Were you ever in the support business, Paul? Did you ever have to do that? It's a nightmare job.
Actually, all of us in the tech industry are in the support business, right? We all have families.
Right.
Yeah.
Because who are they going to call? Who are you going to call?
Sure.
Paul Thurrott. I get people calling strangers. I get people sidling up to me in the grocery store saying, you're the tech guy, right? I'm not kidding.
That's great.
I got this problem. I got this pain all up and down my side.
90% of my email involves the following 2 sentences. God, I'm a huge fan of your stuff. I really like your stuff.
Now,
I have a question.
Can you help me with this? Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Me too. In fact, I actually have a boilerplate.
Sure.
That I type. It's if I type sorry with 2 S's, SSORRY, it goes, and it fills up this really long mail message saying why I can't help you, where you can go to get help, apologizing profusely, et cetera, et cetera.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's very handy. I use it a lot.
It's very, very efficient.
Well, I'm worse than you because I set myself up as an expert on the radio. What a mistake that was, huh?
Sure.
Yeah, watch here. I'll just show you. I'll just give you a little. Let's see. No, that's not it. Here. Okay, I just typed right here. Here's the email. SSORRY. Bleep. Thanks so much for writing. Unfortunately, due to the volume of mail I get, I don't have time for your stupid questions.
Wait, you've sent that email to me.
Oh, wait a minute. Never mind. Never mind.
Leo, I'd like to switch Thursday for Wednesday. Thank you for writing. Your email is
you don't still get that. You don't get that still. No. I hope not. My sister Eva will be responding to you in 5 to 7 months. Please do not write again.
Right.
Thank you.
It's always treacherous to hire family, by the way.
Your call is important to us. That's why we.
Not that important.
That's why we forward it to an anonymous stranger in the Philippines who barely speaks English.
Right.
Windows 7 feature of the week. And when I say week, I mean WEEK. There's been some confusion.
Yes. Although this one is arguably one of the weaker features.
Okay.
This one is, I just had a meeting with a guy from Microsoft who used to be on the user account control team, and he was sharing some of the humor around trying to launch this feature in Windows Vista and how it went over so well with so many people.
This is I sometimes I'm very sympathetic because, people want to be secure, but they don't want to do anything about it. And they damn sure don't want you telling them, anything like, you shouldn't be doing that. Get out of my way.
To me, the greatest user account control story of all time is, of course, the famous Apple ad where they made fun of it in one of those I'm a Mac, I'm a PC ads, to which I would reply, Apple had this feature in Mac OS X 4 years before Microsoft did, and it's more annoying on the Mac than it ever was in Windows Vista.
They invented it.
And this is just a fact. I mean, By default, in Windows Vista and in Windows 7, user account control works in such a way that if you're logged in as an administrator, which most people are, you don't have to enter a password every time user account control comes up. Now, as a Mac user, that you do have to enter your password every time your version of user account control comes up. If you have a standard user account in Windows Vista or Windows 7, you do have to enter the password of an administrative account. So it works like this.
Point, though, and a really good point, is that you are, even if you're an administrator, or have an administrator account, you're not operating as administrator until you press OK on that UAC
Which is
dialog.
the whole point of user account control, right? Is that for 99% of the time that you're using the computer, this is what user account control does. You're actually running under standard user account privileges, which are far, far lower, right, than administrative privileges. And when user account control comes up, this dialog, you're only giving permission to that process to run temporarily as an administrator, and then of course once it's over, it's the system is back to the way it was. So the primary change between Windows Vista and Windows 7, aside from that new car smell, is that user account control has actually been detuned somewhat, so that it's not as aggressive. It doesn't come up for as many different things. Some of the stuff that came up for in Vista, I think things like changing a printer and so forth, were just annoying. There was no point to that. So it's less annoying out of the box, which is great. But it's also more controllable. You can actually set this thing to work in different ways. So there's a slider control. And I remember the first time I saw this, I just thought this was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. There are 4 settings on it. So it's on a scale from 1 to 4, Windows 7 is by default set to 3. This is the default setting. The top setting, which is what I would call the Windows Vista setting, is always notify. So anytime any program tries to make a change to the computer, Windows will pop up a user account control.
That's when it's kind of annoying, because it's like you want to delete an icon in the desktop.
Oh, it's almost anything. Yeah. Now, way down to the bottom is a setting called Never Notify, and this is what I would call Windows XP mode.
Yeah.
This thing will
stuck on stupid mode.
Yeah. It won't prompt you for anything. I've never actually personally changed it to anything. I've left this the way it is by default. Always. I've never had any issues. But if you're particularly security conscious, and if you want to run as an administrator account, but have it actually prompt you for a password, not just to say okay, you can change that setting so that user account control can be as annoying as humanly possible. So if you're particularly security minded, I think that would be the change that you could make. So whether or not you like user account control, I don't think anyone's a fan of user account control per se. It certainly is an interesting security feature, and I think that it's something that's a lot less annoying than it used to be, and can be configured the way you wish it to be. Whether that's for evil or good, that's up to you, I guess.
User account control. Use it for good or evil.
Well, in Windows Vista, you could change the settings. It was more convoluted to do so, but it was very hard to stop the security center from prompting you all the time that this thing was off. In Windows 7, when you make these changes, the Action Center, as that's now called, doesn't annoy you all the time. Like, hey, your user account control setting is not optimal. They got rid of that.
Yeah. And now the Windows 7 tip of the week. Well, I hate to cut off your tips, so we'll get to that. Then we'll do the Audible.
Okay. So I should mention, I got a few emails from people that, unfortunately, the tip I had last week doesn't apply to all locales around the world. So depending on where you live, you may not actually have access to Internet TV. So I apologize for any confusion there. I think there were people going into Media Center and hoping to turn on Internet TV, and they couldn't find it. So I guess if you live in maybe anywhere but the U.S., I apologize for not thinking of that. However, this week's tip will apply to everybody, which is that one of the great new features of Windows 7, of course, is this new taskbar. And there's all kinds of things. We've talked about the taskbar a lot. You can change the way it looks. You can change the way the icons appear. You can change the way things are, bundled together. If you want the different windows for the same application to have different buttons and so forth, you can do that. But I think one of the very basic features that is available in this new taskbar, and it's not immediately obvious, but I think it's one of those things that people will really like, is not only can you pin your own shortcuts to the taskbar, like you could in the Mac OS X dock, or unpin the ones that Microsoft provides for you if you don't want them there, You can also move these things around. And this was in response to an amazing bit of user monitoring where they would Microsoft would bring people into labs to see how they use their computers. And one of the things that amazed Microsoft, because they had to ask why they were doing this, is that many people would launch applications in a very specific order. And then if every once in a while they would shut all the applications down, and then they would launch them again in the same order. So they would say to these people, what are you doing? And what they wanted was for the icons in the taskbar to always be in the same order. Because in previous versions of Windows, the ordering was based on the order in which the applications were launched. So one of the things you can do in Windows 7 is simply just move the icons around, and they can be wherever you want them to be. So not only can you pin them there, so the shortcut's always available, but you can also move the buttons around. So if you want them, it's a very basic feature, but it's something that was never available in previous versions of Windows. And this kind of icon ordering and pinning and unpinning also applies to the tray notification area. And one of the little things that I do is I have certain applications, some of them run at launch time, that I don't necessarily want to use all the time. So for example, I have an application for my 3G card that lets me get online with the 3G card. I have an application for Windows Live Sync, or the Skype application, for example, that I only use for Windows Weekly when I record the podcast. By default, the little tray icons for these applications would be hidden inside of that little management area instead of being out on the tray. And I actually pull these out so they're always visible. So for example, I only want Skype to be running when I'm recording the show. So we record the show. And when we're done, I turn it off. But that little tray icon stays down there. Now, that means Skype is still running in the background. And if I don't want Skype, I actually want to turn that thing off. So I know to exit it. And by having it always visual or visible in the tray, I know that it's there. But if it was hidden, I wouldn't know that it was running. So these things, I leave them. I make sure that their icons always appear in the visible part.
I do the opposite, but you're right. That's the way you should do it.
Well, because I don't want them to be running when I don't need them.
Right.
So
very smart.
Anyway,
I really like. I know we talked a lot when 7 was on its way and it was in beta about the both the taskbar icons and the system tray icons. I have to say, I think 7 does it exactly right. It just feels right to me. It feels intuitive. I like it.
Yeah,
I love the ability to drag stuff in and out. I didn't know you could until I think it was you who told me. And once I knew that, boy, I thought, this is great. This is what I want.
And I think, that's the point. I think there's a lot of this stuff. People will discover that you can reorder these icons simply because they misclick.
Right.
And the thing moves with them, and they're like, what's going on?
What happened here?
And once you realize you can do that, I think that's actually going to be very valuable for people. I order my icons in a certain way, and I don't mean I literally have the same icon order on every one of my computers, but I tend to have the browsers together, email and instant messaging. I have the media applications, the things that are, content creation like Word, my blogging program, the Visual Studio tools, and so forth. I tend to lump application types together, and I think that helps from sort of a muscle memory standpoint.
Yeah, me too. Although, now, this used to be a problem. I don't know if it's still a problem in 7 of icons reordering themselves. And I have had a problem with 7 sometimes with, like, I put an icon, move an icon in, and it'll jump back to the end or stuff like that. I hate it when that happens.
Hey, your PC is haunted, Leo. Sorry about that.
For a while, I thought it was sorting them alphabetically or something.
Sure.
Maybe it's 7 I got.
I had a computer that came from one of the PC makers. I was going to bring it on a trip. And it was actually back in probably March. I was going out to Vegas to do a talk on Windows 7. And I couldn't use it because there was some kind of bug in my user profile that would cause, every time I tried to move an icon, it would shoot it out to the right of all the icons.
Yes.
It was, and actually I ended up bringing it just for the kind of comedic effect, that there are problems in Windows that just aren't really solvable beyond creating a new user account, blowing away your old user account, that kind of thing. But yeah.
I think it's probably a registry, key that's write only or something like that. There's all these little, but all modern operating systems have these quirks.
Well, and this is the first time they've made this stuff available in Windows, so it will get better over time.
Did you want to talk about Natal at all? Because I think it's next week that we're going to see the release of Project Natal. I'm practicing already.
Well, we're going to, so I think what they're going to do is announce the release date and maybe the final branding if they're going to do that. And yeah, we'll see. No, we'll talk about that next week.
Okay, next week. We're going to be at E3. I'm going down there with Brian Brushwood, and we'll cover Microsoft's. We wanted to go in and First of all, I wish we were getting there Sunday night earlier. We're getting there late Sunday night because Microsoft's doing a Cirque du Soleil party for Project Natal. Are you going?
No.
Me neither. And then, so we'll get there like at 11, missed that, unfortunately. And then Monday morning, I wanted to cover the Microsoft press conference and was informed that we could not.
Okay.
We couldn't bring cameras in there. I don't know. But they said, we will give you an embed code that you can embed our feed of it on your site. I think they don't understand what we do. They think we're bloggers. Because I'm not going to embed... I can't embed their feed into the TWiT live feed. That's not going to do anything.
No.
For me. I mean, we could do play back the feed and do but we don't need to be at E3 for that, so I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah, you could do what you normally do, which is have the feed on and then
talk about it. Do the Mystery Science Theater 3000 version. But that's crazy because we're there. I'll be standing out front. Anyway, I don't know what to do.
Sorry.
So, yeah, I think, E3 is an odd conference. I think it suffers because nobody in the past ever wanted to cover it. So
it got crazy. And then everyone wanted to go, and then they toned it down, and then everyone planed, and now it's returning to its spectacle days.
It's not like CES, where if you want to cover a press conference, it's a press conference, and if you are press, well, you'd be more than welcome to cover it. Apparently, for some reason, Microsoft doesn't want us to cover their press conference.
I think it's a nature of that business, right? It's video games. A lot of kiddie stuff goes on down there. So adults acting like children and actual children.
I don't understand it. You'd think that if you have a press conference, don't you want the press to...
I've always, the reason I wrote about video games for a long while there was that I was very disappointed in the quality of the writing and the quality of the coverage in the video game industry. I find it to be very juvenile.
Maybe that's what it is. That they really are afraid of what we'll do.
No, I've always despised that stuff. It's bad language. It's juvenile attitudes. I just don't. Even the good publications are full of that, and I've always found it very disappointing.
I promise not to use bad language.
Well, it's silly. That's all. It's just it's childish.
Childish. Yeah. That's not me. You know me. I am.
You're not like you and your farm. You're.
I'm a paragon of maturity.
Farm.
Oh, shut up, you! Screw you, Paul Thurrott. Screw you! All right, let's talk. Oh, look, Ken Shepherdson just came running in. It's okay. It's okay. We'll continue.
He just breaks the glass in the wall.
He snapped. Yeah, we do. We have a special thing. It's a little tranquilizer dart. They can shoot into my neck and then go. But we won't be using that today.
Technical difficulties.
Earlier on the show, we talked about Audible.com. I'm excited. The new Facebook Effect book is out. Are you? I don't know what that's going to be, but it's been getting a lot of coverage.
Right.
Yeah. It's David Kirkpatrick who wrote this. Do you know him?
No.
I don't either. But it's finally out. The inside story of the company that is connecting the world. What I want to know is it going to be hagiography or is it going to be reporting?
Right.
This is what worries me. He had the full cooperation of Facebook's key executives.
Yikes.
That's a bad sign usually.
Yeah.
If they want to work with you, that's a bad sign.
Sure.
Yeah. No, but I'm curious. I'll be very interested. What have you? Are you on your trip to New Orleans? You reading any? You should read like some New Orleans detective novels while you're
Well, it's funny. Someone who works at the magazine, like I do, was mentioning this World War II, National World War II Museum. And I said, I'm a huge fan of the World War II stuff. And we were talking about different things. And we ended up going over there together this morning. And you have these moments sometimes with people where you realize you're completely on the same page, which was, we're looking at this tank, a very particular kind of tank. And he said, oh, God, what does this remind me of? And he started snapping his fingers. And I said, Kelly's Heroes. And he said, oh, my God, that's exactly right.
Oh, that's hysterical.
Because it's absolutely that tank, with their kind of rounded top. And it was just really funny. But
you like those war movies?
Yeah. And we were talking about the Pacific series that was on HBO recently. This is the follow-up to the Band of Brothers, telling a similar story, but for the Pacific Theater.
Oh, I loved Band of Brothers. I'll have to see that.
Yeah, it's not quite as good as Band of Brothers. It drags it out a little bit. But, I think that this aspect of the war is less well-known to many people than the European stuff. And this has certainly been the case with me. So there have been some excellent documentaries, new documentaries about World War II that were released in the past year. World War II in HD and World War II in color, both of which have some information about the Pacific Theater that I had never heard of and was really kind of fascinated by. But this person from the magazine, Sean Doobie, mentioned that the Pacific is based on a book which is this week's audiobook, which is, I have no idea why it says sample there, With the Old Breed at Peleliu and Okinawa by E.B. Sledge. And this is a first-hand account by a soldier who was in some of the most horrific battles ever, and in World War II, in the Pacific Theater War, and it's just it's fascinating stuff.
With the old, why does he call him the Old Breed?
I'm actually not sure.
Huh. At Peleliu, and I think you're right. I think the Pacific Theater was just a horrendous slog, and I think it'd be fascinating to read this. There's quite a bit of stuff on that here, by the way.
Yeah.
This is
the
called,
Pacific's worth seeing, obviously.
This is called John Keegan, who wrote the book on World War II. I have that, and I love it. He called this one of the most important personal accounts of war I have ever read. E.B. Sledge was in the 1st Marine Division, so he's talking about his own experiences at Okinawa.
Right.
Wow.
Right. In the Band of Brothers, I think one of the things that's interesting about the story is that so many of those guys make it through the war together. And one of the sharp differences with this story, is that these guys all die.
Yeah.
That there is no band of brothers that makes it all the way through the war, because it was so horrific. And that might have something to do with the Old Breed. I mean, there was I think a big disconnect between the guys who had been through any of those battles and then the green recruits who would show up and think
they have no idea.
They were going to kick some butt, and it was like, you have no idea what you're talking about, how awful this is. And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but as you move through the Pacific and how horrific that was, and the days and days that would go by in single battles, and the hundreds and then thousands of people that would die. It was just such an amazing thing. The scope of it is just hard to even understand.
Well, this is one of the things I really like about Audible, because it's a chance to read history. I don't have time for stuff like reading, but
sure.
Audible saves my life with that. I mean, I get to read several hours a day because it's time I've spent in the car, or the hour I spend at the gym every day, or doing the dishes, walking the dog. Whenever you have some free time that you can't hold a book, you can at least listen to a book. And because Audible plays on all your phones, it plays on all your iPods and portable devices, you can really listen almost anywhere, anytime.
Yes.
Audible.com/Windows. Go there, sign up for that gold account. That's a book a month. It's a good way to start. And the first one is free, and you can keep it and cancel it any time. So if you don't want to, we say free, but in the sense that if you don't cancel, and somebody said, hey, they charged me. Well, yeah, because if you don't cancel in the first month, you're going to get another book, and then they're going to charge you for that one. So, but you can cancel at any time, and you will get to keep that book for as long as you want, and that's what I like about it. With the Old Breed at Peleliu and Okinawa, E.B. Sledge. That's Paul's recommendation. Lots of great history, lots of great sci-fi, lots of great mysteries. It's all there, audible.com/Windows. We thank them so much for their support of Windows Weekly. It's a great company with a great product. Now, moving on to our software pick of the week, Mr. Paul Thurrott.
So, if you follow along on Wakupa, which is that great software tracking site,
love it.
You may have discovered something kind of fascinating on my own account this week, which is that my #1 software application last week was actually Safari, Apple's web browser.
Busted.
Now, the reason for that is I was testing it with the new Hotmail stuff, and I was using it for that because, one of the things that Microsoft's doing with Office web applications, with Hotmail, and the new Windows Live stuff online, is they're making it more broadly compatible across more browsers. So Safari was my choice, and that's what I was using, and it looks great for whatever that's worth in Hotmail. But interestingly, and coincidentally, this week, Apple released Safari 5, and there's one major new feature in there, this Safari Reader View, which is actually pretty decent.
You like it? Yeah.
Yeah, I do like it. And there's some new stuff around HTML5 compatibility, which of course is the buzzword right now in the web browser world. You may remember last year everyone was talking about JavaScript engines, and this year it's HTML5. But I think this stuff is important, and I think Apple's doing some interesting stuff around there. So temporarily, at least, Safari 5 is now my default browser, just again for testing purposes. We'll see how that goes. But
on Mac or Windows? On Mac.
On Windows. Yo, Mac, you're so cute. No, oh, Leo.
Oh, Leo. But we both agree we're Chrome users, right? I think you're a Chrome user.
I am a Chrome guy, by and large. But, since this new Microsoft has been coming out, I've been using a lot of different browsers. I've actually used IE8 a lot, and I don't totally hate myself for that. And I've been using Safari. But I think if someone were to come to me on the street and say, seriously, which one do you recommend? I think I'd go with Google Chrome.
Me too. Yeah.
So,
but that's today. That's the beauty of this.
That's today.
It changes so fast.
Things change. Now, one of the neat things I think about Safari that may or may not make a difference is that they finally opened this thing up to extensibility, and you can have add-ons and so forth. And I think that's what put Google Chrome over the top. I think in the early days when it was just very fast and very sleek and so forth, it was interesting, but I think what really put it over the top was these add-ons, and it seems like that market has really taken off on Chrome. Now, I don't know how this works on Safari. If you can write an add-on that works in a browser and it works no matter which platform you're running it on, I hope that's the case. But I think that the addition of add-ons can make a difference. If I can see, for example, the Log Me In add-on appear on Safari for Windows, that would make a big difference to me. So we'll see. But the software pick this week is really both of these browsers. I think that with an eye toward HTML5, which I do feel is very important, that these are the two browsers that are doing the most to aggressively adopt HTML5 features.
I don't think it's an accident. They're both based on WebKit. So that's why.
I'm a little disappointed they didn't change the Safari UI at all. I think that.
It's funny. I was using it and I forgot that I was using it.
Yeah.
It's the same.
They took a big chance with the previous version. Remember, they actually had a beta, and they were going to do something new with the tabs.
Yes.
And so many people complained. They went to kind of a really boring, old-style look, and now they're doing it again in this version. So this one seemed a little rushed out for me. I think they wanted to get on the HTML5 bandwagon and do more with HTML5 than they had been, and that was the point of this release. But again, if that's I think I know that HTML5 is the future of the web. I think it's important to rally around those products that are taking advantage of this stuff. And as far as I can tell, Safari and Chrome right now are the two big ones for adopting HTML5. So
I would agree with you, my friend. I would agree perfectly. And most people, I would say, at least most people who listen to this show, most people who listen to TWiT have probably every browser on their system.
Yeah.
So on Windows, you use IE8 as kind of your default, or
so historically it's been Chrome for a while. Lately it has actually been IE8, and again a lot of it's just around the new Microsoft stuff. But I figured this is supposed to work cross browser. Let me check that stuff out. So I'd used Safari for a while. Right now I'm on Safari 5. I mean, I don't expect to stay on Safari 5, but
I'm surprised you're using it. I kind of gave up on Safari a while ago. I mean, not that it's bad. I just like Chrome so much.
Yeah. Well, okay, but remember in the pre-Chrome world, right? Using Mac OS X, I recall when Safari first came out, before it was available on Windows, and I always said, there's a Spartan quality to this application that I really enjoy. It seems like small and fast and light. Right. And, the fact that it wasn't easily extensible in some ways is kind of an advantage, at least from a security standpoint. And I always sort of said, well, if they would just release this thing on Windows, I'd be all over it. And then they did release it on Windows, and I said, well, I'm not really interested in using this Apple application because it's, it's like an Apple, it's like a Mac thing running on Windows. It doesn't seem like very much of a name.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
they have. It's ironic because they have these Safari technology demos on the Apple website, which won't run. They're supposed to demo HTML5, but they don't run on any other browser.
Sure.
Even though Safari is not, in my opinion, the most.
There are even differences between Safari on Windows and Mac. That very demo that you're showing right now, if you run that on Windows, doesn't have all of those controls.
Right.
So this is a work in progress, but I think that's the point. If you're, concerned with this future technology stuff, I think it's interesting to go and look at which HTML5 features each of these browsers supports. I mean, both of them supply a pretty good list of stuff. Not surprisingly, if you were to compare Apple Safari 5 and Google Chrome 5, there's a lot of overlap, right? They support many of the same HTML5 features. So I think, people should try them all and just make a determination.
Why not? Why the heck not? It's all free.
If you do something like run certain web applications, there might actually be some benefits to running, say, Gmail in Google Chrome, but browsing the web in Firefox or something, just from the standpoint of, switching to the application. It's kind of easier to tell from the icon that you're doing something different, and to switch between them in that fashion, right? I mean, if you have 20 Google Chrome windows open or tabs open, it's harder to find stuff. I think, if there are different browsers, it might actually be easier from a visual standpoint.
That's an interesting thought, yeah. Well, Paul, we've come to the end of a fabulous episode. I hope you enjoy yourself at Tech Ed in Nolans.
Thank you, sir.
And you'll be back, I guess, home next week?
I will.
At the usual time and the usual place. We do this show. We record this show normally Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, 1800 UTC. You can watch it at live.twit.tv if you want to watch us do it live, which means it would be the absolute freshest. The beignets would still be hot. The sugar would be crystallized perfectly. And then, if you can't consume it when it's piping hot, you can reheat it by going to twit.tv/WW.
Now with the stink of chicory.
We'll infuse it with a truffle blend.
Yes.
And so it'll smell a little moldy, but it'll be nearly as fresh as if you watched it live, and it won't have any of the swear words. So there. Or the nudity.
Sorry. I have a small Tourette's problem.
We cut the nudity out completely.
Sure.
That's twit.tv/WW, or just go to the Zune Marketplace or the iTunes Store, or wherever any good podcast is found, and it's free, and it's available, and you can subscribe and get it every day, and all that stuff. Paul Thurrott writes for the SuperSite for Windows. It's his. WinSuperSite.com. He's also a news editor for Windows IT Pro, the author of the soon-to-be-released Windows Phone Secrets and the currently released Windows 7 Secrets and the previously released Windows Vista Secrets.
That's a lot of releases.
He's a man of few secrets, but many releases. We'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye. Take care, Paul.